question I had really was just where we come from to the conference today.
Oh, from the Boston area, Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay. And have you been to Vancouver before?
I have. Yeah, I've been here several times. I think this is, how many conferences is this? This is
This is the sixth.
I think this is my sixth conference.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Good. So you're a veteran.
I am.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, what I wanted to ask was, tell us a little bit about your story. How did you become involved in Agile? I mean, obviously you've had quite a history. You've been doing this for a long time.
I was a reluctant Agilist.
Okay.
I was really quite suspicious because it was a very developer-centric approach to software development, and I came from a project management background. I mean, I've been a developer and a tester, but I was quite concerned because the first folks said, we're developers, we don't need no stinking managers. And I thought, right. And then they said, we don't need no stinking testers. And I said, oh no, you don't. I know enough about software to know we need stinking testers. And I don't buy it. So I was quite suspicious. And I really thought it was a license to hack. So I said, let me look into this. And I used time boxes forever.
Yeah.
I knew about pairing. I knew about continuous integration. I had never run a project that did not use continuous integration.
Yeah.
So I knew a lot about the practices, but I did not understand how you could run a project of any size without coordination. I did not understand that, and I did not understand how you could run a project where people signed up for stuff without a project manager to make sure that everyone signed up for everything that needed to get done. Because I had never been on a project where you had equally responsible people, and that was the key.
Right. And
so I actually had to see it in action.
Yeah.
So the first time I remember back in, I think it was 2003 or 2004, I was working on an assessment where they were doing 6-week iterations of a client, and they were succeeding, but not succeeding enough. And I said to them, you would be much better off if you could work in iterations that were shorter. And they said, how much shorter? And I said, maybe 2 or 3 week iterations. And I said, oh my God, I've turned into an Agilist.
Now, was it actually called Agile at that time? I mean, you said in your talk that people were doing the, pair coding, that sort of thing, but was it actually called Agile at the time?
In 2003 it was.
In 2003, yes.
Yeah, but so for example, I've been using time boxes since, I don't know, when did I graduate from college? Back in, I had been using the word inch pebbles since I had started using the word inch pebbles in the 70s. I did not coin the term. Some guy from the Air Force coined the term in the 40s. I had published the term in the 90s. And I learned about the guy from the Air Force in the 90s or the early 2000s. So a bunch of us were already using these terms. I think I published my first paper on iterative planning in the mid-90s.
Okay.
So there were a lot of us who were publishing and writing about these approaches. We didn't, they made sense.
Yeah.
Right? So if you do things that make sense and you let other people know about them, then, do you care what it's called?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So you've really been working within an Agile framework for a very, very long time.
Oh yeah, I called it iterative.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my first project management workshops called the waterfall life cycle serial, and I said, don't do this if you have a project of more than 3 to 6 months because it doesn't work, and then iterative, because if you have cyclic projects, right, you go back and re-examine because it makes sense. And you can do this, a spiral life cycle is one of them, and chunking, right? If you work in chunks, this works for longer projects, and beware because your architecture may change and code and fix doesn't work. So choose something, and one of my later slides said you can combine life cycles, so you can iterate in chunk, right? I didn't realize that, I just had not put the time boxes with the chunks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never occurred to me.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Good.
Yeah.
So you've got quite a history, quite a story then behind you.
Yeah.
Super. My next question is your topic that you chose. Obviously, you did the keynote today. Why did you choose that specific topic for the conference?
Well,
you must go through a process about what am I going to speak about.
well, when Eugene asked me to speak, he said, we'd really like to we'd like you to talk about where is Agile going. And I thought, well, if I knew where Agile was going, I would talk about it. And so I wrote a description that was so open that I could change it. And I was serious when I said that my keynote had actually gone through many iterations, many of them this past week. So I actually rewrote that keynote totally in the last week several times. So I wrote, when I approach a keynote, I write a paper that's for my consumption. It's not anyone else's consumption. And then I practice. I write the slides and I practice. And then I say, well, that's horrible. And I rewrite the keynote. And then I practice it again. And I say, well, that's not much better. And then I rewrite the keynote. So it's especially a keynote like this one, where I wanted to talk about the necessary changes for culture. If I had the answer, if I knew what the culture needed to be, then I would tell you what the culture needs to be. But I don't think that there is one Agile culture. And since I'm such an extrovert, I can only start talking about this and exploring it by talking about it. And
So opening the floor for discussion, really.
that's really what I wanted to do. Because if I thought that there was just one Agile culture that would make sense, I would say, oh, this is the culture that you need for Agile. But I don't think that there is one. Just as there is not one Agile approach, I think that there are many more kinds of potential cultures for an Agile organization.
Which makes sense because there are so many different cultures within such a wide variety of different businesses as well.
Yes.
You know, so that it doesn't just fit one type of business.
Right.
It suits or is open to discussion for many types of businesses.
Right.
Yeah, and the different cultures that they have within it.
Right.
Yeah. The next question, you know, obviously part of the topic, and you alluded to this a lot of times in your talk about the elephants in the room.
Yeah.
And you named a couple of them in the presentation. What is a elephant in the room that you see in your world? You mentioned one of them or two in your talk. What's one of the sort of bigger ones in your opinion?
Well, I think one of them is the fact that testing still has not caught up to development in many of the teams, right? That's sort of the first level. If testing hasn't caught up to development, how can you have releasable product at the end of the iteration? Or how can you get to releasable product if you're using flow? I think that that's kind of nuts. And the more I think about Agile, I think that we have this weird dichotomy between Agile and Lean. In a sense, the iteration is say this? For some people, iterations make sense, right? It makes sense, especially if you have a lot of technical teams and you're trying to get them to focus on a wide number of features across, and they're continuously integrating, and you want a checkpoint at the end, just to make sure everyone's at the same place.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? But for a lot of people, once you've been doing Agile for a while, the iteration is, or can be, a crutch. And you don't really need it anymore.
Yeah.
Right? If you've learned how to make your story small, you don't really need the iteration. You can move to Kanban. And you should.
Yeah.
If you can.
So is that sort of how you would resolve it? How you'd get rid of that elephant is to move to a different methodology or a different way of doing something that would make it better?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's...
Don't stick to the one thing.
Right, don't just stick to it. Figure out what else you need to do. But I think that's one approach. And so, and I think another big elephant is figuring out what to do with managers. A lot of managers do not realize, one of the things that I dropped from this talk is what to do with managers.
Yeah.
A lot of managers don't realize that they need to build communities of practice. So what we lost when we moved from functional managers to Agile teams is we lost the coaching and mentoring of the expert.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of functional managers had expertise in their function, and we lost that. And so now we have people who have no functional expertise.
So what would you do to resolve that?
Communities of practice.
Right.
And there are some books about communities of practice, but oh my goodness, they're based on knowledge management systems. Oh, sorry, I don't know knowledge management systems. I don't know of any that work. That I think you have to do knowledge management systems one-on-one. First, in any tool, first you do it person by person. And then if there's a shot of making it work, then you automate it. But you don't automate something that you don't know how to do first. And so we have a lot of work to do figuring out how to do communities of practice. And that's perfect for our managers.
Yeah.
And God knows, we need them. We need these.
Well, and it's like you said, if you don't have the manager's commitment, they can put such a stop to the whole process.
Absolutely.
If you've got the bottom up, the top down, but if the middle managers aren't with you, they fight it everywhere.
Oh, every step of the way. And if we have middle managers doing communities of practice, managing the project portfolio, and leading the way on the hiring, figuring out what to do with a whole bunch of other stuff, which of course I can't think of because I'm in the middle of an interview, right? But there's a whole list of things that they need to do. Then they have enough stuff to keep them busy. It's not, we can't get rid of the middle managers. So it's not like there's nothing for them to do.
Yeah. Good. Well, that's great. It gives us a lot of good information. We're just making each of the interviews just real short and sweet. My last question, just sort of a fun question. What is your favorite gadget? What is your sort of thing that you couldn't live without, whether technology or something that's just...
Well, I can't decide if it's either my Kindle or my iPad.
Yeah.
So I would have said, until I did not bring my Kindle on this trip. I'm learning how to live with fewer and fewer things in my briefcase. And so I only have my iPad too.
Yeah.
And I am learning how to make movies with the camera and read my books and take notes and do everything on my iPad too. And I'm not actually a Luddite, but I am not as early an adopter of gadgetry as I should be. And I'll tell you, I am a happy woman.
Good.
I am.
Good.
I happen to have both my computer and my iPad with me, and I don't know how I lived without it. I don't know. So I'm going to be able to take notes and tweet and and do everything I need to do with my iPad too.
Yeah.
How did I live without it?
How'd you live without it? There you go.
I don't know.
Good.
I don't know.
Fantastic gadget to have.
Yes.
Super. Well, thank you very much, Johanna.
Thank you.